Hey there folks, welcome to another marvelous anime video. This time, we're back again with more Claymore content for you. For the uninitiated, Claymore is a dark fantasy series set in a medieval background featuring a group of biologically altered female warriors that battle inhuman fiends that feast on humans. We follow the story through the eyes of Clare, the weakest of these warriors, as she sets out on a quest for revenge against the monster that killed her beloved guardian. This series, however, isn't your typical revenge story, as it continuously evolves as the series progresses into a tale of growth, coming of age, and compassion. Norihiro Yagi, the mangaka behind this series, takes you on a journey filled with visceral action and hard-hitting themes with his masterful artwork and a penchant for telling great stories. Claymore is a marked departure from his earlier works like Angel Densetsu, but it's largely recognized as his definitive work. In this video, we're going to talk about everything from the things that influence the origin of Claymore to its world, primary characters, and the things the anime doesn't cover, and why we haven't received a new anime adaptation, as well as its overall legacy. This will be your comprehensive guide to the world of Claymore, and whether you're someone who's just watched the anime or read the manga, we've got something for everyone. So strap up as we take you through yet another journey through the bleak medieval world of Claymore, where monsters wear human faces, and these beautiful half-human warriors are the only things standing between salvation and slaughter. We're ready to begin, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Origins of Claymore, manga and anime. The genesis of Claymore has a far more unlikely story than you might have imagined. The mangaka of Claymore, which is considered one of the most iconic dark fantasy series of all time, has his roots in a completely different genre than what actually made him gain mainstream popularity. Prior to Claymore, Yagi's first successful series was called Angel Densetsu, which was published by Shueisha from 1992 to 2000. While they do share some thematic DNA regarding things like character empathy, social misjudgment, and personal growth, Angel Densetsu and Claymore sit on opposite sides of the spectrum of genres. Angel Densetsu is a high-school slice-of-life comedy series that follows the misadventures of Seiichiro Kitano, a high school boy who gets constantly misunderstood due to his appearance, which leads people to assume that he's a violent delinquent. The tone of the series is defined by its slapstick humor, irony, and emotional warmth. We can clearly see how his first-ever series had a profound influence on the creation of Claymore. For instance, in Densetsu, Kitano's core appeal came from the contrast between his appearance and his actual personality. We get a strong sense of characterization through misunderstanding. You can see where we're going with this because in Claymore 2, Clare and the female warriors are widely misunderstood and feared due to their appearances by the general populace, yet they're actually working to save them. There's also the fact that despite their general perception, due to their appearance, we know Claymores are fully capable of displaying the entire spectrum of human emotions and not just the negative ones. There's also distinct familiarity with how he handles visual storytelling, mainly through facial expressions from his earlier work in Claymore. Despite Kitano's fixed, scary face, Yagi effectively shows nuance through subtle expression in body language. The same thing can be seen in how he handles Clare, who's emotionally restrained, but we get to experience what her character is trying to express through a similar use of micro-expressions and subtle body language. Even the character development that Clare experiences has its roots in Angel Densetsu, where Kitano's environment slowly changes because of his internal strength and kindness. Similarly, Clare too evolves emotionally, changing from a revenge-fueled lone wolf to one who's surrounded by comrades and friends who fight for more than just vengeance. When asked during fan Q&As and interviews about what made him make such a drastic genre shift from slice-of-life comedy to dark fantasy, Norihiro Yagi provides us with a lot of insight regarding what influenced the move. According to the mangaka, after 8 years of drawing only comedy, he wanted to challenge himself artistically by creating something that was more visually dark and dramatic. He also expressed his desire to explore a female protagonist with great emotional depth, which was something that Angel Densetsu didn't really focus on much. He was also greatly inspired by his trip to Europe, which we'll explore more later in this video. As you can see, the genesis of Claymore lay in Yagi's comedic roots, which allowed him to write characters that resonated emotionally with the audience and tell deeply human stories set amongst blood and tragedy. The world, story, And main characters. The universe that Norihiro Yagi managed to create in Claymore is bleak and atmospheric, steeped in medieval themes, and filled with tragic and morally ambiguous characters. It's a world that's so intrinsically designed that it feels lived in and immediately sucks the audience in. As mentioned earlier, Yagi was heavily influenced by his trip to Europe, particularly France, which led him to create a world that was highly reminiscent of medieval Europe. The story of the series unfolds on a fictional medieval island plagued by inhuman creatures called Yoma, who appear as demonic or supernatural beings to the audience. The only thing standing between these Yoma and the humans is a group of enigmatic female warriors, all wielding a claymore. Despite their role as protectors of humanity, these women are often shunned and feared by the local populace, who believe them to be witches. In fact, one can draw parallels to the Witchers from Andrzej Sapkowski's works regarding their role as monster hunters and the treatment they're given by the ordinary denizens of the world. Referred to as the Silver-Eyed Witches, these women perform a thankless job for coin in a world that hates them. They are created through a harrowing surgery which they undergo as prepubescent children, where the flesh and blood of the Yoma are directly infused within their bodies, transforming them irrevocably into these hybrids capable of facing these fiends. Every Claymore shares a bond of trauma caused by Yoma, which has corrupted their innocence and filled their young hearts with a desire for vengeance against these inhuman beasts. It's said that the strength of a Claymore directly correlates to the hatred in her heart towards the Yoma. They are created by a group of morally detached men belonging to a group known simply as the Organization. While on the surface it seems like they're creating these Claymores for the protection of humanity, a far more sinister and insidious conspiracy is later revealed that turns the entire series on its head. This is, of course, only present in the manga, and the anime ends quite prematurely, but more on that later. The Organization has a huge supply of these warriors, and it ranks the top 47 of them in order of strength, with the number 1 ranked warrior being the greatest of her generation. There is, however, a caveat to this transformation, and their newfound power and excessive usage of Yoki energy that fuels them eventually leads them to awakening, transforming them into a version of the very Yoma that they hunt. Clare, a young girl with a tragic past involving Yomas, is thrust into this maelstrom of death and mayhem when her protector and guardian, a rogue Claymore called Teresa of the Faint Smile, is killed before her eyes. Teresa was no ordinary Claymore. She was, in fact, the strongest warrior in the history of the Organization, and more importantly, she was someone equivalent to Clare's second family after the tragic demise of her original family. However, after she's killed by Priscilla when the former awakens during their fight, Clare is left shell-shocked, watching her world shatter to pieces for a second time. Just like the many recruits of the Organization, she too approaches them to gain the necessary power to enact her vengeance by becoming a Claymore with the severed head of Teresa in her tiny hands. The Organization, sensing an opportunity to preserve their investment in Teresa, embeds her remains into Clare instead of the regular procedure that involved the flesh and blood of a Yoma. However, to their disappointment, Clare wouldn't manifest her true abilities immediately, leading them to deem her a failed experiment, granting her the lowest rank. Clare is a stoic, emotionally repressed character at the start of the series who eventually opens up and fulfills her potential as not just a warrior, but also a human being. She transcends from being a vengeance-driven outcast to someone who embraces empathy and ultimately rejects revenge in favor of compassion. It's through her that the majority of the themes of the series play out, and she acts as both the thematic and emotional anchor for the series, acting as the overarching antagonist and the menacing threat looming over the entire world of Claymore is Priscilla, the one-horned demon. Just like Clare and the other Claymores, Priscilla's past is one filled with horrific trauma related to the Yoma. She would lose her family at a very young age when her father would devour her entire family. It's hinted that she killed her father and survived for days on his flesh. Traumatized and scarred for life, she would become one of the many orphans recruited by the Organization. However, in her, they would find not just any ordinary girl, but someone with the potential to even surpass Teresa, their greatest warrior. In fact, so great was her prowess and potential that immediately after joining, she would be instantly promoted to the rank of a rank 2 warrior. This was unprecedented because normally a warrior makes their way up the ladder, earning her ranks by either surpassing the warriors ahead of her through her own power or their demise. It was unheard of for someone to be shepherded in right from the get-go into the second highest rank. She had dislodged Irene, who had held that rank for the longest time and was considered the fastest sword amongst the Claymores. Due to her ability to nullify her own Yoki, she proves to be a perfect counter for Teresa, who thrived on reading her opponent's Yoki during combat. Despite this advantage, the senior overwhelms her, using only 10% of her powers. Unable to comprehend how someone like Teresa, who, according to her, was a villain for breaking the law, could prevail over her, who was on the side of righteousness, Priscilla steadily begins to lose control. As the two warriors warriors face off against each other, Priscilla begins to release her yoki, rapidly reaching the point of no return as she comes increasingly close to awakening. Despite Teresa trying to calm her down, Priscilla helplessly starts turning into the very thing she abhors, and before you know it, taking advantage of a momentary lapse of attention from Teresa, she decapitates the greatest Claymore to ever live. What she effectively becomes is an anomaly as she transforms into a being greater than even the abyssal beings who, up until that point, had been the strongest monsters in the Claymore universe. If Clare is the anchor, then Priscilla is the catalyst for the entire plot, as her killing Teresa sets off the whole story, providing Clare with a reason to start her journey as a warrior. She represents the thin line between victim and victimizer, and the monstrous potential of even the most innocent characters. Connecting both these characters is a human boy called Reiki. His early life kind of mirrors Clare's own, as he's a young orphan ostracized by his village after his family is killed by a Yoma. Just like Clare did long ago with Teresa, he begins to follow the latter around wherever she goes. This harkens Clare's memory back to her own past, due to which she begins to harbor a soft spot for him. Just as she had done for Teresa so long ago, Reiki becomes Clare's emotional anchor and serves as her moral compass and humanizing influence. Later on, after getting separated from her during their encounter with the psychotic Claymore Ophelia, Reiki journeys north where he's taken in by none other than Isley, the abyssal one of the north. There, he makes his acquaintance with Priscilla, who clings to him, sensing the faint smell of Teresa on him. In a strange twist of fate, he journeys with Priscilla, Clare's arch nemesis, next. He's one of the first ones in the series, after Isley, to realize Priscilla's truly tragic nature and understand that all of her actions thus far had been driven by a singular purpose, orchestrating her own death. There's also his crucial role in the final battle of the manga that finally ties him to both characters. Together, these three characters and their arcs build the structure of Claymore from a simple tale of revenge into a story of redemption, growth, and discovering the meaning of humanity. Why was the anime cancelled? The Claymore anime was undoubtedly the gateway that drew a lot of fans into the series. While it is of an extremely high quality, with a brilliant production crew behind it, it failed to live up to the manga's hype for various reasons. The anime was produced by Madhouse Studios and directed by none other than Hiroyuki Tanaka, who's also well known for directing Hellsing Ultimate and working on Attack on Titan as an assistant director, with Yasuko Kobayashi handling series composition. The show aired on Nippon TV from April 4th to September 26th, 2007, totaling 26 episodes. The series adapted the first 11 volumes of the manga for 24 episodes. Where the kicker lies is in the fact that they came up with a completely non-canon ending for the last 2 episodes of the series. This gave the ending an extremely rushed feeling, lowering the standards of an otherwise stellar show. In comparison, the manga would go on to expand the mythos of the entire series, granting much more gravitas to the world and characters, culminating in an epic tale that would cement Claymore as one of the best dark fantasy series out there. What was even worse was that, up until today, we haven't received a sequel or a reboot for the series. Many speculate that this is due to poor DVD and Blu-ray sales, via which the people behind the show gauge audience interest. In Japan, the show was released across 9 DVDs, later in 5 limited edition box sets, between July 2007 and March 2008. Meanwhile, in North America, Funimation released 6 DVD volumes between fall 2008 and summer 2009, followed by a full Blu-ray box set in February 2010. Even though there are no exact sales figures available, this can be a valid reason given how underrated Claymore is, despite the anime drawing in new fans. What we do know for a fact, however, is that while the show was airing in Japan, the viewership numbers weren't strong enough to warrant a sequel, despite the show achieving cult status amongst fans. Many people attribute this to the show's mature content, lack of conventional fan service, and lack of straightforward romance. Whether this is a valid argument is up for debate. What's not up for debate is the fact that as the show was approaching its limits, they had no further source material to work with, as it had caught up with the events of the manga at the time. Rather than adding filler like other shows do while waiting for more manga to come out, the showrunners decided to go a different route, as mentioned earlier, by choosing to craft an original ending. Ultimately, the forced ending, along with factors like the lack of source material, or commercial success, and mature themes attracting a niche audience, are cited as the reasons for the anime being cancelled. However, like we said, it's been over a decade since then, and we feel a series of Claymore's quality does warrant a reboot. Now that the series has an even larger fan base, with the manga having already concluded, the showrunners shouldn't face half of the issues they had with the 2007 anime adaptation. We at Marvelous Anime are praying to the anime gods and keeping our fingers crossed for this one. How the manga ended and what anime fans missed. While the anime adaptation ends around chapter 55, the manga continues for around 100 more chapters, covering several important arcs that flesh out the story much more by developing the characters further and introducing new factions and conflicts. Let us now explore how the series diverges from the anime adaptation and what fans of the anime missed out on if they didn't follow up and read the manga. Oh yeah, and spoiler alert, because obviously. The downfall of the organization. Miria sets out alone to the organization's headquarters to take down her nefarious creators after learning about the truth of their creation. While she initially enjoys success against the gathered Claymores, displaying just how much stronger she'd gotten over the last 7 years, she's eventually overwhelmed and hacked to pieces. However, what we learn is that during the fight, she had not killed a single one of her sisters and had merely knocked them out, and this hadn't gone unnoticed by them. Moved by this, they help her heal up unbeknownst to the organization and listen to her part of the story. Convinced by her, they then stage a mass rebellion against the organization. Panicked and sensing their end, the organization even desecrates the corpses of the 3 strongest Claymores in history outside of Teresa and raises them up from the dead to defend the organization. This, however, backfires gloriously, as these individuals prove too strong to control and go on a rampage, fighting amongst themselves as newly awakened abyssal beings. Eventually, with the help of Raki, who frees the young cadets, the Claymores finally slay their masters and bring an end to their thraldom, earning their very first taste of real freedom in a world as real human beings instead of mere expendable tools. The truth of the world is revealed. For the entirety of the series, we're made to believe that the setting of Claymore is its entire world. However, we get a shocking revelation that the place where the events of the story take place is just an island. What is even more mind-boggling is the fact that it seems to be a massive research facility where the organization experiments on creating inhuman beings that they can control. This is because their overlords are stuck in a protracted war on the main continent against another group of beings that can transform into inhuman creatures like the abyssal ones as well. Fighting a losing battle against a far superior foe, they had been tasked to find an answer at any cost. Thus, they had actually engineered the Yoma using the cells of their original foes and artificially manufactured these tragic and traumatic scenarios to not just fund, but also provide them with willing candidates for their experiments. We learn that the first generation of Claymores had all been male, and the reason why there are no males now is because they were considered highly unstable as they awakened very easily. The revelation that the world of Claymore is essentially a petri dish for their vile experiments really irrevocably subverts the story and is something that anime fans will have sorely missed out on. Priscilla and Clare, the final conflict. Clare and the Ghost of the North, along with some of the awakened beings, put up a final stand against Priscilla. As the battle rages on, Priscilla proves to be too strong of a foe, wounding Clare severely and even killing one of her comrades. With the battle now seemingly hopeless, Raki, who Priscilla had presumably killed in their fight earlier, appears out of nowhere and stabs the awakened being through her throat, catching her by surprise. Using this momentary lapse in concentration, Clare swiftly destroys her. However, despite this, Priscilla manages to survive by absorbing the awakened beings around her to fuel her power and recovery. With the battle truly at its zenith, Clare finally realizes that she has never been alone all this time and awakens. But to everyone's surprise, her awakened form turns out to be Teresa. With Teresa back in the land of the living, the tides of battle swiftly turn in favor of the protagonists. She manages to draw out the absorbed beings from Priscilla's body, weakening her once more. Teresa acknowledges that Priscilla was already dead, and what remained in front of them was her hatred given shape. She therefore sets out to complete the task she failed to do all those years ago by failing to put Priscilla out of her misery. Teresa then awakens, but her awakened form resembles that of the winged goddess of love who was her namesake. In this form, she easily overcomes Priscilla's hatred and finally slays her. With the threat of Priscilla now finally gone, she too disappears, leaving Clare in the hands of her comrades and Raki. The journey's end. The manga provides a sense of closure to the fans, which the anime most definitely does not. After Priscilla's defeat, Clare and Raki journey back to Irene's Valley to recount their adventures to her and live out their days in peace. Miria and some of the remaining Claymores decide to take on the remaining awakened beings to rid their island of these fiends. Many of the ghosts of the North decide to go on their own journeys now that they're finally free. The younger Claymores are taken in by Galatea into her church in the holy city of Rabona, where they're cared for. Many Claymores join Galatea to ensure that their younger sisters are raised properly. Finally, Rubel, the handler, is allowed to escape the island, but with a stern warning to his masters that if they were ever to turn their eyes on the island again or plan any retribution, they would have an army of silver-eyed witches with their claymores on their throats. The manga ties off all the loose ends and ends with a hopeful note, ending the cycle of violence and trauma that defined Clare and her fellow warriors. Legacy and modern updates, remakes, live action, fandom. Despite its 2007 adaptation ending prematurely and diverging from the source material, Claymore maintains a strong global fan base, particularly among hardcore fans of the dark fantasy and seinen genre. Calls for a faithful remake are common and not unheard of since we now have gone over a decade without one, while shows like Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and Hellsing Ultimate are proof that faithful remakes can reignite the fan base and prove to be extremely successful as well. There is often a surge in fan-made petitions and social media campaigns whenever a dark fantasy series gains in popularity. However, despite this, there hasn't been anyone willing to take a chance on adapting this series. As of now, there's no official announcement for a remake or a live-action adaptation. However, with Netflix and Amazon recently investing in adaptations of mature anime, fans speculate that Claymore would prove to be a great venture for them due to its having a cast of strong female characters along with lots of gore and high-octane action. Claymore is often praised for the way it handles its all-female cast by avoiding fan service and objectification without pandering to any group or ideas. Regardless of whether it receives a new adaptation, its legacy is undeniable. It was a benchmark for early 2000s anime, serving as a rare example of a female-driven, combat-heavy, mature manga that dealt with some hard-hitting themes and stayed consistent in tone and art throughout its runtime. While not as popular as Berserk, Claymore has maintained its niche of hardcore fans, which continues to grow larger with every passing year. Marvelous verdict! Claymore stands as a haunting yet powerful tale that left a deep imprint on the dark fantasy genre. Though its anime adaptation fell short of delivering the full narrative potential, the manga provided a complete, emotionally resonant journey, one of vengeance, identity, and liberation. Its story concluded with satisfying closure, the fall of the organization, the defeat of Priscilla, and Clare's long-awaited peace. While the anime might paint us an incomplete picture, the bright side to this is that there is so much more to still discover in the manga. Despite its legacy being cemented as one of the greatest dark fantasy series of all time, it still feels like the franchise has a lot more to offer. Even with its ever-increasing popularity, the series remains underexposed compared to its dark fantasy peers. The growing appetite for mature, character-driven anime has reignited interest in older, overlooked gems, and Claymore is frequently at the top of that conversation. Fans continue to advocate for a faithful remake that would do justice to the manga's full arc, art, and emotional depth. One can only hope that we'll have an adaptation in the not-too-distant future that will not only do justice to Norihiro Yagi's legacy, but also deliver on fan expectations. We hope that you've enjoyed watching this video. We post daily videos featuring all of your favorite animes and manga, including Claymore, on our channel. If you enjoyed this video, maybe consider leaving a like and subscribing to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for sticking with us right to the end of this one. We hope to see you soon in the next, but until then, stay safe and stay marvelous. See you next time.